Bruner is a disgrace. I suspect I'll be taking it away very quickly. I think that Bruner is a disgrace with his wife Nellie. For him to be in the Justice Department and to be doing what he did, that is a disgrace. That is disqualifying for Mueller. And Mr. Mueller has a lot of conflicts also, directly yourself, so you know that. Mr. Mueller is highly conflicted. In fact, Comey is like his best friend. I could go into conflict after conflict. But sadly, Mr. Mueller is conflicted. But let him write his report. We did nothing. There's no collusion. But if he was doing an honest report, he'd write it on the other side. Because when you look at criminality and you look at problems, take a look at what they did, including colluding with the Russians, the other side.
All right, that was the president, rightly, what we were talking about last hour. Yeah, Bruce Orr, and we can go through Strzok and Page and Comey and McCabe and a bunch of others. Yeah, all should be losing their security clearances. Add to that Susan Rice, add to that James Clapper. Why they have it is pretty remarkable to me in the first place. Anyway, 800-941-SEAN if you want to be a part of the program. You know, one of the things that our good friend Peter Schweizer has over the years been able to do is he's been able to follow the money and find out how is it all these politicians have become filthy rich and they're supposed to be government servants, and where does the money come from and where are the conflicts of interest? And in some cases, I would even argue, like in the Uranium One deal, an obvious kickback scheme. And there is a new book out that they have put out. Seamus, Bruner, Peter Schweizer, who wrote the foreword for the book, have now come out with an interesting new book. The book is called Compromised: How Money and Politics Drive FBI Corruption. FBI corruption. Now, James Comey's net worth has skyrocketed 4,000% by the time he left in 2005 and came back in 2013. Comey made $6.1 million after Mueller granted his employer, Lockheed Martin, largest contractor in history, a $1 billion boondoggle. Under Mueller's direction, the FBI granted multiple spy contracts to Lockheed Martin while Comey was advising them on the legality of their operations. Comey also received another $6 million working for one of the world's largest hedge funds, and an additional $500,000 for unused vacation time. Mueller cashed in as well. And in 2013, when Comey took over the FBI, well, Mueller left to start consulting, a consulting firm. He made more than $3.5 million in about a year, giving speeches and representing clients who had previously enriched as FBI director. Clients like the world's most profitable spy corporation and some other places. Now, two of Mueller's former clients are cooperating with the special counsel, Facebook, Apple. Mueller's former client, the paragon of privacy, Apple Inc., provided the special counsel with access to Paul Manafort's iCloud, despite making a public spectacle protecting the San Bernardino terrorist privacy. Mueller's former client and other paragon of privacy, Facebook, well, they may be cooperating with the special counsel voluntarily without a subpoena, according to congressional testimony of CEO Mark Zuckerberg. Now, the Uranium One CFIUS Review Board was compromised from the start by both political and financial conflicts of interest. The FBI, the DOJ, knew the Russian schemes and apparently did nothing to stop the Russian takeover of 20% of America's uranium. And we know how much money got sent into the Clinton Foundation coffers in that particular case. But then you've got other Russian players. They're involved as well. You know, we've got people like Andrew McCabe and Rod Rosenstein and Andrew Weissman and others. Well, they gave a favorable deal to a Russian accused of bribery, extortion, and money laundering in the U.S. nuclear sector. And it goes on from there. Now, I read this today, and I'm sitting there, I'm stunned. You know, why is this? None of this has come out until today. Anyway, the book is called Compromised: How Money and Politics Drive FBI Corruption. And joining us now, it's always good to have him back, Peter Schweizer, author of Clinton Cash and also Secret Empires: How the American Political Class Hides Corruption and Enriches Family and Friends. It's also the president of the Government Accountability Institute. And Seamus, Bruner, is the author of this new book. Welcome, both of you, to the program.
Great to be here, Sean. Thanks for having us.
You did the forward for this. I'm reading all of this, and I'm saying, you got to be kidding me. Everybody in government enriches themselves? Every single one has conflicts like this?
No, they don't. And Sean, that's, I think, really what's interesting about this is, we saw with the Peter Strzok emails and other evidence of political bias at work among people involved in all of this. Seamus came to me a while back and said, I think there's a crony angle to all of this that involves follow the money, that there are these deals that these guys engaged in, and that is an important part of this story. So I said, okay, go ahead and dig in and see what you can find. And he followed the money, Sean, and exactly some of the information you just talked about. He exposes the fact that Jim Comey and Robert Mueller are very close friends. They met each other in the 1990s at the Justice Department, and have really been sort of this tag team from the beginning. When one of them's in the private sector and the other one's in government, they steer contracts in the direction of people that they're affiliated with, and vice versa. And it's a very, very troubling story that shows the revolving door applies every bit as much to these gentlemen, and crony capitalism applies every bit as much as it does to other people in Washington.
I'm stunned at the Comey story and the Mueller story more than anybody. And I really want to ask you, Seamus, I mean, Comey made $6.1 million after Mueller's FBI granted his employer, Lockheed Martin, I guess he was doing consulting for them, $1 billion project.
Well, it's really interesting, Sean. It wasn't just consulting. He was senior vice president of Lockheed Martin and general counsel. So he was the top lawyer at the largest contractor in U.S. history. Now, Lockheed Martin gets about $50 billion a year. 95% of that is in taxpayer money. And James Comey, who's never been the general counsel of a corporation that large, comes in 2005. And, by 2009, he's made $6.1 million just in that year alone. And that's disclosed in SEC documents. It's various levels of cash and stock options. But $6.1 million in 1 year. And this is after, in 2008, Robert Mueller gives a program called Next Generation Identification. It's a surveillance program. It's biometric facial recognition. They're basically turning everyone's face into a fingerprint. So it's really shocking.
But let me go through this. So how is it, how does this not get reported in all this time? James Comey is the one that leaked the information to his professor friend, government documents. We might have even been top secret and privileged in many ways, to the professor that puts it in the New York Times for his admitted purpose to get a special counsel. And clearly he's also friends with Rod Rosenstein. Everybody seems to know everybody in all of this. And they appoint their other friend, Mueller, to then be the special counsel. But meanwhile, Comey made millions because he was representing a group that did Mueller sign off on that contract with Lockheed Martin? Did he have a say in that?
Well, it's hard to imagine a contract worth $1 billion that the FBI director wouldn't have to sign off on. But there are other contracts, too, and some of them it doesn't even appear were, competitively bid, or at least there were protests. IBM protested one of the contracts. There's another program called Sentinel program that was given to Lockheed Martin, and IBM protested the contract award to Lockheed Martin. So, these $100 million contracts coming from the FBI to Lockheed Martin while James Comey is their general counsel and senior vice president are really kind of shocking stuff. And Mueller's really no different. He cashed in as well.
Well, let's talk about that, because then when Comey took over the FBI, Mueller cashed in 2013. How did he make his money?
That's exactly right. Like Peter said, they kind of work as a tag team. So Mueller leaves in 2013. James Comey takes over. Mueller goes and sets up Robert Mueller and Associates, consulting firm. He starts giving speeches, much like the Clintons do, and returns to his old firm, Wilmer Hale. And some of Mueller's clients there are really interesting characters. You've got Apple Inc., Facebook Inc. Both of those corporations are now cooperating with a special counsel. Apple received a court order to give over Paul Manafort's iCloud data. Now, they refused a court order to unlock the San Bernardino terrorist's iPhone, so they have this.
I want you to go slow and say that one more time, because I don't think people are going to fully understand the depth of this.
Right. So Apple Inc. kind of sells itself as this paragon of privacy. They're going to keep your data private.
Right.
And the San Bernardino terrorist is one very public example where they resisted court orders to unlock this terrorist's phone. Well, Mueller's special counsel, issues them a subpoena for Paul Manafort's iCloud. And
then they cooperate on the Paul Manafort case, but not the terrorist case?
That's right.
Interesting.
And that actually led to more charges against Manafort, a couple obstruction.
And how much money did he get with his Apple contacts and clients, et cetera?
Well, these are clients of Wilmer Hale, but specifically listed in Robert Mueller's personal financial disclosure. We know that he made over $3.5 million in just over a year. So the only financial disclosure we have for Robert Mueller covers just the year 2016 and through the beginning of 2017.
It's like a revolving door. You go in the government, you go out, you make money. While you're in the government, you help person A and whatever projects they're working on, and they end up making a lot of money. And then you leave the government, and that person goes back in, and then they help you make money, as in the case of Mueller and Comey. Am I hearing you right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. This is something, Peter, you have, followed on different levels, and it's happening a lot. The Clintons were probably the worst of anybody when it comes to the absolute amount of money. But it seems to me that, it just on its surface, it stinks to high heaven. Any laws broken that you see?
Well, it's hard to know whether the laws have been broken, but I think what it does, Sean...
By the way, it's funny that Mueller's making fun of, trying to make fun in this Manafort case of the lifestyle of Paul Manafort. And his stupid ostrich jacket. If he's guilty of anything, he's guilty of horrible taste.
Well, that's right. And Sean, but the other point I think that we have to really factor in is, you think about this issue of the security clearances and the John Brennan's being pulled. Think about this in the context of what Seamus has been talking about in these contracts. If you do not have a security clearance as a retired FBI director or a former DOJ senior executive, if you do not have access to that security clearance, you can't work for these contractors. So it's not just an issue of John Brennan or James Comey or whoever having access to these, clearances for purposes of knowing what's going on. It actually affects their bottom line in a big way. And this revolving door is a big problem. We know that it happens in the Pentagon. We know that Health and Human Services people, do favorable things for, say, a pharmaceutical company, and then they leave and go work for this pharmaceutical company. As Seamus lays out in the book, the same thing is going on at FBI and DOJ, and Jim Comey and Robert Mueller are involved in it. And I think one of the reasons you're going to see a lot of pushback and a lot of screaming on this issue of security clearances is it goes to the heart of their ability to cash in. If they don't have a security clearance, they cannot cash in with these contractors in this way.
All right, we got to take a break. This is a brand new book that's just out. It's called Compromised: How Money and Politics Drive FBI Corruption. It's pretty breathtaking, especially in light of some of the arguments that Mueller's team tried to make in the Manafort case, in the Manafort trial. It's just pretty unbelievable to me. Oh, he has a rich lifestyle. Well, apparently so does Comey and Mueller, that nobody knew about. And apparently they used each other's contacts in a way that I think raises a lot of eyebrows. 800-941-SEAN.
This kind of punishment to chill speech is a violation of the First Amendment.
I mean, this is a striking move towards authoritarianism. This is what dictators do. They shut down the press, they shut down dissent, they jail their opponents. Or in this case, they steal their security clearance.
What happened here was a pure authoritarian act from an intemperate president who wanted to punish one of his critics. Nothing more, nothing less.
The White House is threatening him right now by taking away his security clearance. They've already great. It doesn't influence my commentary. But they've already taken it away from John Brennan. So doesn't that say to everybody else, shut your mouth?
All right, that's your media melting down over revoking the corrupt former CIA, former communist director of the CIA, John Brennan security clearance. Listen, we keep making the case why everybody should be losing their security clearances involved in anything involving the lying, the fraud to a FISA court, or disseminating and propagandizing and misinforming and disinformation campaign against the American people with that phony Clinton bought and paid for Russian dossier. They're all involved with all of this. Now we're finding out all this new information. It's interesting how all these FBI guys made a fortune with their contacts and nobody seems to know about it. But yet Robert Mueller and his team are making fun of the ostrich code of Paul Manafort. Anyway, we'll take a break. We'll come back. Peter Schweizer and Seamus Bruner, the author of the brand new book, which, by the way, I recommend highly you get. It's called Compromise, How Money and Politics Drive FBI Corruption. The amount of money we're talking about is staggering. That's next.
James Comey, you have the right to remain silent, and you might want to use it. This is the Sean Hannity Show.
All right, as we continue, Peter Schweizer is with us and Seamus Bruner is with us. Their brand new book, Compromised, How Money and Politics Drive FBI Corruption. I want to go over again, how important is it to people like all of these ex-spies, FBI officials, CIA officials, that they keep their clearance and clearances if they're going to represent places like Lockheed Martin?
Yeah, it's a huge issue, Sean, because if you work for a contractor, let's say you're a former assistant director of the FBI, and you go work for Lockheed Martin, or you go to Booz Allen or one of these other consulting firms, you are working on classified projects. You need a security clearance. So if you are John Brennan, for example, who was a contractor after he left the intelligence service, those opportunities dry up because Booz Allen, for example, can't hire you. Lockheed Martin can't hire you to work on any intelligence programs because those programs are classified. So, this is not, I think people get the impression that, this only matters because, people are going and talking on CNN or, they're curious about what's going on in the world. No, access to top secret security clearances is key if you are going to work for the multitude of contractors out there working in the national security or the intelligence space.
This is serious money, though. I mean, Comey's made a fortune. Mueller's the FBI director, and then Comey makes a fortune. Then he becomes the FBI director, and then he's helping Mueller in what he's doing, whatever lobbying, whatever deals he's involved in. Seems like a quid pro quo to me. Sounds like something that maybe they should bring before Judge Ellis. I wonder if they bought ostrich jackets and expensive cars as a result of it all. Pretty interesting.
Well, I think you're right, Sean. I mean, these are the sorts of issues that are very, very relevant, and it also shows the nature of so much of what's going on in Washington. You've got the political element. It's also about cashing in. I mean, you are more familiar with the Uranium One story than anyone, and I think that one of the things that Seamus dug up that's so curious about this, shocking, frankly, that I didn't know of until he uncovered in the book, involves a top Hillary Clinton advisor while she was Secretary of State and considering Uranium One, and what his financial ties were. And maybe I'll just let Seamus fill you in on that.
I'll give you the last word, Seamus. We only have about 20 seconds. It's all yours.
All right. Well, right. Hillary Clinton, something shocking, and huge thanks to you, Sean, for keeping your listeners and America informed on the Uranium One scandal. No one's done it better, really. But we found something even more sinister than all the money that went to the Clintons. Hillary Clinton's State Department had an advisor, a man named Ted Kassinger. He's an attorney in Washington. Well, while he's advising Hillary Clinton's State Department, he's simultaneously on Putin's payroll, working for the specific Russian nuclear company, a subsidiary of Rosatom, who was taking over Uranium One. And so he met repeatedly with Hillary's CFIUS representative, a man named Jose Fernandez, throughout 2010, and he even met with the secretary herself earlier that year, about 6 months before the deal.
Mm-hmm. I look at all of this, and for example, one of the points I was making and have been making, now that we have all of this analysis that Bruce Orr and Christopher Steele were talking about firewalls and firewalls, plural, holding, and that he had a real fear about Comey's testifying, which Sarah Carter broke last night. And all of this is unfolding about Russia. Then we have Russian lies that are disseminated to the American people that Hillary paid for, even by the CIA director, Brennan. And then we have those same Hillary paid for Russian lies put together by a foreign national. I thought it was wrong when foreigners got involved in our electoral process, but apparently if you're Hillary and it's your campaign and it's a foreign national that's using Russian sources, I guess that's all okay. And then somehow we end up, Peter Schweizer, talking about Paul Manafort's taxes that have nothing to do with Russia, nothing to do with the campaign, nothing to do with collusion, nothing to do with Donald Trump. I listened to Judge Ellis talk about this isn't about Manafort. This is about putting the screws to Manafort so he'll sing or compose and then maybe they can prosecute or impeach Donald Trump. But with all this information on Russia, we got a tape of, Shifty Schiff, who also works on the House Intel Committee, talking to a Russian, breathlessly thinking he's getting research about naked pictures on Donald Trump. We've got the evidence of him conspiring and colluding to get that information. We don't have such evidence in the Trump case after nearly 2 years. And I'm thinking there's something really wrong with our system, that it's working this way. And look, I know it took a lot of digging on your part, but I'm guessing not as much as I think. You found this information in public records, Peter.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right, Sean. And this is, I think, what people out in the country are so frustrated about. Look, if somebody has colluded or had colluded, they want it exposed. But let's not have a double standard. And there's no evidence after all the scrubbing and investigation by Robert Mueller. There's nothing that rises to level of collaboration. And yet we know for a fact that the Clintons, for example, that other individuals, political figures have had financial ties with Russian entities, that the Russians were involved in providing information to Christopher Steele, and it's that double standard. Why do we apply a different standard to the Clintons or to someone else that we don't apply in the case of Donald Trump?
Yeah.
And that's
you did the best work. I mean, I learned everything I learned on Uranium One from you, or most of it from your book. You were way ahead of the curve, and then I think we even learned a lot more. And in this book, you're even taking it a step further because you have the Clinton State Department advisor, Ted Kassinger, simultaneously on Putin's payroll, advising the nuclear corporation on the takeover of Uranium One. But we also know, and this was Robert Mueller again. He was the FBI director at the time, right? Yes. Robert Mueller knew that we had Putin operatives in America, that they were involved in bribery and extortion and kickbacks and money laundering. And yet, we knew it because we had a spy that I've interviewed inside working for our government that was telling our government, and still the deal was allowed to go through, and Putin had control of 20% of our uranium, and then the Clinton Foundation got, $100 and how many million dollars kicked back to them?
Yeah, $145 million. There was money that ended up in the Clintons' pocket, and I think you nailed it as it relates to Robert Mueller in this. As head of the FBI, they are involved in the CFIUS review of this transaction of the Russian government getting 20% of U.S. uranium. And that CFIUS process, Sean, is all about determining who is buying this company, in this case, this uranium company, and is there any evidence of criminal activity involving that company? And there was. There clearly was. And the FBI senior executives knew about it. And we know about it now because of this whistleblower. So the point is the CFIUS process was exactly set up precisely to intervene in the case like Uranium One and say, hold on for a second. There's criminal activity involving this company that wants to take over this company. We are not going to approve it. And yet the FBI sat silent. It's mystifying. And we still don't know to this day what those deliberations were, how those deliberations went down, and that's one of the things that I'm hoping that Congress is going to investigate. And this is not just about history, Sean. CFIUS under President Trump has become an even more important institution, looking at Chinese transactions in the United States. So we need to know when CFIUS has failed and why it has failed, and we can only know that by opening up the case file and looking at the Uranium One deal.
All right, I agree with all of that. Great work. Both of you. I'm sure it's going to piss off all the people that already hate my guts, so they'll just add your names to the list. Thank you very much, Peter Schweizer and Seamus Bruner. The book is called Compromised: How Money and Politics Drive FBI Corruption. We're going to make a big deal of this in the days and weeks ahead. I promise you both. This research is going to get out there. 800-941-SEAN is our toll-free telephone number if you want to be a part of the program. CJ is in Texas. CJ, hi. Happy Friday, and welcome to the Sean Hannity Show.
Hi, Sean. Happy Friday.
Wow. Are you always this happy? I'm not that.